Not all local government units are created equal. Some are endowed with resources and can afford to conduct activities such as data gathering for evidence-based planning, programming, and policymaking. But what about LGUs that are resource constrained? I am Jay Carizo, a local governance and data specialist, and I will be your learning companion in this module. This module has two sessions. This session, which is about taking stock of available data and identifying data gaps, and the next session, which is about addressing resource-related challenges and constraints. The session is divided as follows. The first part is a presentation of the session objectives. The second is a quick review on why local government units need data. While the third is taking stock of what we have or what data do LGUs have. And lastly, understanding data gaps and generating information needed for the data gathering plan. The objectives of the session are simple. First is to take stock of what organizations or local government units have and understand as well as address data gaps. And lastly, generate information needed for a data gathering plan. Why do LGUs need data? There are a number of reasons, and here are some. First, data provides the context where our LGUs or organizations operate. Data defines the policy environment and identifies the needs and concerns that must be addressed. Data also enables policymakers to render timely and evidence-based decisions. To add, data also provides the basis for effective, efficient, and economical programming of government resources. Third, data gives a better understanding of the constituency, particularly the concerns, the issues, and the needs of the people or the population in a particular LGU. And lastly, it provides a basis in designing better and more responsive programs and projects. If properly used, data could enable LGUs to effectively, efficiently, and economically perform their mandates and also empower citizens to participate in governance. It should be noted that local government units need to produce at least 33 plans, all of which require data. And the 33 plans must be completed in 3 years, and some of them needs to be annually updated or annually done, such as the annual investment plan. 22 of these plans are mandated by the national government agencies, while 11 plans are sectoral or thematic and mandated by law. And this include the Local Disaster Risk Reduction Management Plan and the Gender and Development Plan. These 33 plans are in addition to the PPA-related documents. PPA means projects, programs, and activities. So these are in addition to the 33 PPA-related documents mandated by different laws and policies for budget accountability and effective service delivery. Then, most LGUs complain because they lack data. LGUs say, oh, we don't have this, we don't have that. Especially among the 4th, 6th class municipalities, where some departments are manned only by their department heads. So these are one-man departments. And as such, they would prioritize project implementation over data gathering. And hence, no one gathers or consolidates the data. Of course, it is also a reality that not all LGUs have the capacity to finance data gathering. So the question is, what should they do then? Or what should we do then? The first thing that should be done is to take stock of available data and resources. Sometimes the data are there, but in another form, or the data are there but needs to be processed. This is because local government units produce data. They produce data in transactions, in meetings, program implementation, and so on and so forth. When LGUs distribute seedlings to the farmers, they are generating data or they are creating data. And this includes the number of seedlings distributed, the number of beneficiaries, the location, and in some instances, the socio-demographic profile of the farmers or the beneficiaries. LGU activities are also opportunities for data collection. Simple meeting attendance is data. And simple meetings can be used to gather more data. Buntis Congress of the rural health units, for example, can be used to generate the socio-demographic profile of households, particularly of households with pregnant women and lactating mothers. What is needed, therefore, is for LGUs to appreciate what is available, the data available, and consolidate the same. So what are the data available? Here comes the conduct of data inventory. Generally, data inventory is a listing of the available data in the LGU. So it contains the name and description of the data, what it is about, how is it stored, and so on and so forth. Example is the CBMS, which could be digitized CBMS data and contains the 14 Sustainable Development Goal indicators. And then an inventory of the data also contains location. Where is the data stored? It could be in a server, standalone server at the planning office, or it could be in a computer of a particular employee or the focal person, or they could be in the barangays. And then the data inventory also contains the name of the person, the focal person or the manager who is in charge. For example, for CBMS data, there is always assigned a focal person to manage that data. And lastly, the data inventory also contains policies, especially how can the data be accessed, including the process, of course. So for example, for the CBMS data, they fill up and submit request forms with specifications on the data needed. Of course, the policies also contains data privacy clauses. It should also be noted that the Action for Economic Reforms, or AER, provide technical support for the conduct of data audit. This is also a very useful support that the LGUs can avail of. This time, it is normal that LGUs lack some data sets or may have data that are not updated. So, what should be done? Well, we need to understand and address data gaps. Data gaps are sets of data that are needed but not available. In most cases, data gathering is necessary as there are no other alternatives. Hence, to understand that data we lack, we make a listing of what data are necessary and then compare it with what we have or the available data, the inventory that we just made. And the difference is called as data gaps. For practical and expedient purpose, we first list the documents and plans that utilize such data or that the LGU needs to produce to be able to complete that document or plan. And then we go back to our inventory. We provide what data are available. And then we list the missing data or data gaps. For example, in a housing resettlement plan, the data needed include, among others, the informal settler families, their numbers, socioeconomic profile, and so on and so forth. But what are the data available? This could be a barangay data on number of families with names of household heads. And from that number of families can be extracted the name of the informal settler families. But that only contains the names of household heads. So we miss data of socioeconomic profile, particularly of the household, so that we can be able to determine who should be prioritized in the housing resettlement project. So here, we list the needed data. We compare this with the available data and we get the missing data or data gaps. To be able to address the data gaps, we need some information on how to generate, where to generate, and so on and so forth. So first, we list the document or the plan that requires the data. For example, the household resettlement plan. And then the data gaps or the description of unavailable data. And here, based on the example, we list the socioeconomic profile of the households, the informal settler households. And then we provide the data specifics. We have no data on socioeconomic profile. So what do we need? So we need a form. We need a data set containing socioeconomic profile of the informal settler households. Then we provide information on how to generate the data. This means we need to identify the methodology and the data gathering tools and instruments. Is it a survey? Is it a request for the available listing in the barangays? Because in some cases, the barangays also provide listings, at least for simple socioeconomic profile. And then we identify the place or the sector or the location where the data should be generated. So we provide the name of the barangays or the purong or the zones where the informal settlements are located. And then we define when to generate. So we need to identify the time for the baseline data. When do we need that? Do we need that 1 month from now? And if you're going to update, how are we going to update? Should this be annual, biannual, or every 3 years? And then from whom to generate. In some cases, the data is there. We don't need to go to the houses. We don't need to go house to house. Maybe we just need to go to the data holder, the barangay official in charge, for that matter. Or if not available, then of course, that's the time we go house to house. Or maybe we can go a little lower from the barangay, we go to the Purok leaders. Maybe they also have data. And lastly, we identify who will generate, who are these personnel and what are their capacities. The planning office, the barangay affairs office, all the LGUs housing and urban affairs office. Or should the LGU create a team to gather data and go from one house to another? A few guide questions though. First, is the lacking data indispensable? Will the document or plan be incomplete without the data? Otherwise, maybe we can set aside first the data gathering and then just include that when the proper opportunity comes, considering, of course, our resource constraints. Second, are there alternate data available? Can a specific issue be analyzed with other data? If the answer is yes, then maybe we may not need to gather data at this point. Maybe we can do some analysis, some processing of available data. For example, in Bongao and Tawi-Tawi, it was difficult to go from one house to another to identify the households, informal settler households, who are usually Bajaus, given the geographic and of course resource limitations, geographic constraints and resource limitations. So some researchers did a geospatial mapping. Usually the houses of the Bajaus are located in the sea. So they map using Google Earth. They tried to identify the houses and they set sample sizes. They conduct a sampling of houses for every specific floor area, how many Bajaus are living there. So given that, they were able to generate an approximate number of Bajau families or households. So that could be an alternative data or alternative data gathering that can be done. When is the data needed? How long will be the collection process for the available data? If the data is needed in 1 week, maybe the collection process should be shortened to at least 5 days, 4 to 5 days. Otherwise, the data collection will just be useless and maybe shelved for use in some other documents or plans. So the question is, will the time be enough for the data collection process? Lastly, are there available time and resources for data gathering? So these are the considerations that we need to be able to determine if we really need to gather the data gaps or the necessary data but are not available. So in this session, we were able to have a quick review on why local government units need data. We also went through a process of listing both the necessary and available data. and from there identified the data gaps. In the succeeding video, we will attempt to address these data gaps through data gathering even with limited resources. Thank you and see you again in the next session.